Hello, and welcome to UDL in 15 minutes, where educators discuss their experiences with UDL. I'm Louie Lord Nelson, UDL author and leader. Today, I'm talking with Matt Magowan, the elementary school physical education teacher and team leader at the United Nations International School in Hanoi, Vietnam. Matt is going to share how UDL helped him shift to intentionally teaching implicit skills. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Louie. Thanks very much for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. So, can you share a bit about what you do and how you came to know UDL?
Sure. So I'm an elementary school PE teacher, as you mentioned, and I came about knowing about UDL through a good friend and former colleague called Marcus Down. We were actually coming out of COVID here in Vietnam, where we'd spent 54 weeks online, and we run a fundamental movement skill screener, which is a universal screener. And after those 54 weeks, we realized that about 25% of our grade fours and grade fives were two grade levels behind. And we subsequently went to try and change our curriculum to meet the needs of our students. And we found that it was really hard to run interventions during curricular time. And that was when my colleague introduced us to the idea of universal design for learning and tier one core instruction.
Wonderful. And really quickly, when you say fundamental skills, were these focused on physical skills? Is it also focusing on the cognitive skills that go along with PE?
Sure, so fundamental movement skills are kind of like the building blocks for more complicated movement patterns. So it's focusing on movement skills, so locomotor skills, and then object control skills as well. So they're basically just the foundations for hopefully leading a physically active and healthy life going forwards with our
Yeah.
students.
I just think it's really good to point out because I think that so many people spend time on, of course, the academic side of learning. And in physical education, you are focusing on those, as you said, fundamental movement skills and how important those are to who we are as learners. So I think it's just key to help people focus their minds on that aspect as we talk more. You've been working with UDL for a while now and helping the staff in your building adopt it. And what did you do specifically in your area of PE?
So I think the big shift for us as a PE team was really moving away from the idea of interventions within our PE program and really trying to think about how we're designing our learning experiences so that there are entry points and accessibility for everyone who is in that present in that class, which maybe wasn't the case beforehand. It was just basically of changing the script or changing how we view things to acknowledge that maybe the barrier to student learning lies not within the students, but actually within the environment that we were designing for them.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what did that look like as you were making those shifts?
Sure. So we're very fortunate at our school is that we have two classes coming together. And we also have, so that means we have two teachers and we also have a teaching assistant. So that having three adults there enabled us to provide more targeted instruction or offer some different activities going on in the same space. Also, we've tried to introduce some structures like choice boards within our PE program. So there's those different entry points are available for different students depending on where they are within their learning journey in that specific unit.
Lovely. So that's really interesting to think about a choice board within a specific unit. And so when learners come in, for example, after they've done what I'm assuming is some sort of a warm up, and then you introduce whatever the skill is they're going to work on that day or whatever the overall overarching lesson theme is going to be, then they're able to go to a choice board and then choose how they want to participate in that skill or activity. Am I correct?
Sure. So, for example, from a recent unit when we've just been looking at our gymnastics with our grade three students, we might come together after a quick start activity. We have our opening circle where we basically share the learning objectives for that particular lesson. And then they might have something that we call personal practice time, where they get to go away. They have a choice board of, say, about, I think it's around about 17 or 18 different gymnastics activities, which they will then be able to later on put together into a routine, which they are working together in small collaborative groups to create.
Wow. I want to come see that. That sounds great. It really does, because I can see the students really picking up on skills or activities that they're interested in. And now they're going to probably want to work more with their peers, and they're going to feel a lot more confident about their end product. So I am curious, now that they've had those choices, what kind of growth did you see in your learners?
I think there's lots of growth, and I think as a subject in PE, we claim that there's learning which is physical, also cognitive in their knowledge and understanding. They're also their social skills as well as affective skills. So in this particular unit, we're also teaching some of those social skills. As I mentioned, they had to work together in collaborative groups to create a gymnastics routine, which they would then perform for their families and then actually teach when we invited their families in. So from the physical side, the students really enjoyed being able to track and monitor how they were doing. The choice board had teaching points on the specific skills, so they were able to give feedback to each other, which I think was a very empowering experience to help them see themselves as experts, even if they couldn't actually teach, even if they couldn't actually perform the skill. They were able to watch their friends, give them feedback based on these teaching points that were there. But then also when they came together as a group, we had these specific strategies which we explicitly taught students as well to help them develop their social skills as well.
Lovely. And would you be willing to share some of those different strategies you provided to the learners? Because I think everybody's always looking for these kinds of strategies to help students mediate their own executive function, right?
For sure, yeah. So when we were starting to identify what might be some of the learning barriers to our unit, it's that time working together. It was focusing on collaboration. And we felt like as adults in our team, we're still working on how to collaborate effectively and just acknowledging that for our grade 3 students who are doing the same. So we identified some common challenges that groups have. So the first one was the idea of sharing ideas and everyone wanting to make sure that their voice was heard. So we introduced them to a strategy we called campfires, where they sit down in a group and then number themselves off 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, depending on how many is in their group. And they just share their ideas based on that particular day's lesson objective. If they didn't have an idea, that was totally okay. They just put their hands across their chest and said pass. But this was a strategy to aim for everyone's voice to be included. We also know that sometimes when you work within groups, there may be some conflict. So we took them through a strategy called a peace talk, which was a step-by-step process of 6 steps, just to try and get them to be able to try and solve those problems themselves. And the third strategy that we introduced was just having some sentence starters just to try and help those students who might need support with either giving positive feedback or maybe trying to build onto somebody else's idea. So just give them a way, the start of that sentence, just to support them and being able to do that in an effective and kind way when working within their group.
Yeah. As an adult, I like sentence starters because sometimes I can't come up with the words. And then if somebody says, well, here's a way you can start the sentence, then I can get going with it. And so it makes me feel better. So I think our students have that same experience.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's something that we realized with our peace talk in particular. As I mentioned, it was like a 6-step process. So the peace talk, the idea is if there's a problem between a conflict between students, then they can just say, we need a peace talk, and it's a dedicated area. And in that area, we have some tools which students can use to regulate so they're able to get back to a place where they're able to have a conversation and try and solve this problem with the student. And then we actually had the sentence starters on a ring just to try and help guide the students go through that 6-stage process as well. And that was something which the students found and continue to find really helpful. So I think especially when you're with heightened emotions, having that there just to try and guide and frame the conversation was particularly useful.
Yeah, I think that's just brilliant. I really do. And then you also have talked about, I guess I'll just call it a strategy that you've used, because we know that in every single learning situation, learners come in at their own level, just who they are. But then we need to be able to demonstrate growth. And so, how have you used those popsicle sticks to help your learners explore not only their own growth, but then it also gives you a visual?
Every student within grade 2 to 5 at our school has a popsicle stick with a magnet on the back, which sticks to our whiteboard within PE. And within each unit, we might unpack what we call an approaches to learning skill or a learning disposition, which for this unit was collaboration. So we use a template taken from Peter Liljedahl's book, Building Thinking Classrooms, and we co-create it with students and ask them to think about what does collaboration look like when done well? And then on the other side of the continuum, what does it look like when not done well? So at the end of each lesson, we ask students to basically place along the continuum how they felt like they were with collaborating in that particular lesson, and just acknowledging with students that every day, every lesson is different. We're not sure what's happened before they came into PE, what they've been going through within that particular lesson, and just acknowledging that it's okay if they didn't progress along the continuum, and just providing that space for them. And it just gives a nice visual for us to check in with students as well. We also use it at the beginning of our lessons as well. So we start off with an opening circle and we ask students to think back about where their popsicle stick was. And we ask them to set a goal on what strategy they need to use in this lesson in order to move their popsicle stick further along the continuum. So this is just a
Mm.
chance to provide some goal setting for the students at the beginning of the lesson.
Mm. Did you introduce that during this time and kind of as you began working with Universal Design for Learning? Is this something you were using before and then it changed as you were learning about UDL?
Sure. So it was actually introduced to me by my former teaching partner, Sydney Kirk, and it's basically just developed as we've been working with UDL. It's just been a really great tool to basically just be checking in with students at the beginning of lessons, whether it's for goal setting, when we are working with them for the gymnastics lesson, when I go and check in with a group and ask them to show me what they're working on. The first thing I ask them to do is to move their popsicle stick along the continuum. So I've got an understanding of where they are within that particular lesson before watching them perform. And then we sit down and just have some conversation and give some feedback based upon their gymnastics skills and also how they're working together as a team.
And what I appreciate about this example is it's something that you, like you said, you learned about before, but now as you've been learning about Universal Design for Learning and applying it, you're now seeing that strategy through a different light and saying, okay, this is why I want to use this strategy and this is how I want to use this strategy. Now, did I just put words in your mouth or am I correct?
Oh no, for sure, that's exactly it. And I think having the students to be able to see and have something tangible which they can hold on is just as important for me to be able to see as well, because it provides that space for like a data point for both of us to be able to talk about and to reflect on, and then also to set goals on going forward as well. So no, it's been a really big tool for our students as much as it is for myself as a teacher.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Matt, I really appreciate this conversation. Before we go, I do want people to know that you have recently contributed a chapter to a book. And so I'd love for you to talk about that for a second.
Yes, there's a book which has just come out, which is focusing on teaching of physical education in international schools. I wrote a chapter based on applying universal design for learning within a particular unit, which is actually a skateboarding unit that we run with our grade 2 students. It was a really wonderful opportunity just to provide space for me to be able to reflect on how I'm learning around universal design for learning and how it's impacting teaching and learning within my own space as well. So it's a wonderful process to go through. And yeah, it feels a bit of a privilege, I'm not going to lie, to see my name all printed out in a book. And I'm looking forward to giving my parents a copy very soon.
Yeah. Well, I've had an opportunity to read the chapter. I really appreciate that. And so this link to your book will be on my website with this podcast. So anybody listening to this, you can go to the udlapproach.com/podcasts. You'll find Matt's name next to this episode, and you'll be able to link through to that book, unless you just want to Google him and you can find it that way too. But I want to thank you so much for being here, Matt. Thank you so much for helping people understand how universal design for learning can be applied within a PE setting. And I think your students are benefiting from your skills and who you are so much. So thank you again for sharing your story.
Thank you very much, Lillian. Thank you as well for all the work that you've done for your podcasts and the books which you've been releasing on different blogs. It's been a massive part of my journey of understanding universal design for learning and trying to interpret that within my own space. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks. So, for those listening to this podcast, you can find supplemental materials like an image montage with closed captioning, a transcript, and an associated blog at my website, which is the udlapproach.com/podcasts. And finally, if you have a story to share about UDL implementation for UDL in 15 minutes, you can contact me through the udlapproach.com. And thanks to everyone for your work in revolutionizing education through UDL and making it our goal to support learner agency.